Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I always believed that my dedication as a husband and father was the foundation of our small, happy family. Every morning, I would wake up early to prepare breakfast for the kids and get them ready for school, thinking that these quiet acts of care were enough to strengthen our bond. But over time, the compliments I once received turned into stinging barbs that cut deeper than any physical wound. I began noticing subtle, yet relentless, digs from Melissa, small comments made in public that undermined my confidence and made me feel invisible. At family gatherings, her laughter was too loud, and her words too sharp as she recounted tales of her achievements at work, often contrasting them with my so-called mundane tasks at home. I remember one chilly autumn evening when we hosted a reunion at our house. The living room was filled with the warmth of old friends and relatives catching up over cups of coffee, and I busied myself making sure everyone felt welcome. As I carried a tray of freshly baked cookies, Melissa, dressed in a designer outfit that accentuated her professional success, stepped forward with a smirk. Some of us are busy networking with the big shots, while others are left cleaning up after everyone, she said in front of our guests, her tone light yet laced with unmistakable disdain. I felt my face flush with humiliation as laughter erupted around me, and I struggled to comprehend why the very woman I vowed to cherish would reduce my efforts to triviality. Inside, I fought a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal that gnawed at my pride. I recalled the countless mornings when she would dismiss my attempts to share my ideas or dreams, labeling them as insignificant compared to her grand plans. Her words echoed in my mind as I silently bore the weight of my own inadequacy, wondering if I should finally find the strength to speak out. I am more than just the one who cleans up, I thought bitterly, my internal dialogue intensifying with every snide remark. Later that night, as the guests dispersed and the house settled into a heavy silence, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I sat in the dim light of our living room, replaying the evening over and over, questioning every moment that led to this painful reality. My heart pounded in a rhythm of confusion and sorrow. I knew something had to change, yet I was paralyzed by the fear of further upheaval. The images of Melissa's derisive smile haunted me, and I struggled to reconcile the loving partner I once believed in with a woman who had reduced my worth to a punchline. In that quiet moment, with the only sound being the ticking of the clock, I wondered how long I could endure this humiliation. The decision loomed large. Should I continue to endure the pain silently, or muster the courage to demand the respect I deserved? The silence of the room mirrored the silence of my own voice, desperate to be heard. I arrived at the evening gathering feeling a heavy sense of foreboding, the weight of yesterday's painful episode still lingering in my mind like a dark cloud. The invitation had come from an old friend, promising a casual reunion at a warmly lit restaurant where familiar faces would gather to reminisce about better times. I hoped that the friendly atmosphere might offer some solace. Yet as soon as I stepped inside, I sensed that the familiar comfort had been tainted by an undercurrent of tension. It wasn't long before Melissa made her entrance, her confident stride and sparkling attire drawing immediate attention. Her smile, polished and insincere, betrayed none of the malice that simmered beneath the surface. She greeted our friends with a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, as if reciting a well-practiced routine, while I felt the sting of every slight word that had been whispered about my shortcomings. As we settled into a large booth, the conversation began with light banter, but it wasn't long before the familiar pattern emerged. Amidst clinking glasses and gentle laughter, Melissa launched into a series of anecdotes about her latest business triumphs, casually mentioning how her networking skills had opened doors that many could only dream of. Then, without warning, she pivoted the conversation to mock my role at home, her tone dripping with sarcasm as she quipped, "Some of us spend our days managing big projects, while others are busy managing the chaos of a household." A stifled chuckle rippled through the table, and I felt the familiar heat of humiliation flood my cheeks. I sat there, the words echoing in my mind, each one chipping away at my resolve until I could bear it no longer. My inner voice screamed for justice, for recognition of the countless sacrifices I had made, yet the initial shock left me frozen and speechless. The silence stretched out, punctuated only by the soft murmur of conversation from other tables, until a friend, noticing my discomfort, leaned over and whispered, "You really deserve better than this." Those words, meant to comfort, only fueled the burning anger inside me. I could feel my heart pounding in a steady rhythm, each beat a reminder of my own dignity slipping away. Unable to contain my frustration any longer, I finally interrupted the flow of the conversation. "Enough," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the ambient chatter like a blade. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me in a mixture of shock and curiosity. Melissa's smile faltered for a brief moment before she tried to recover, her eyes narrowing as she asked, "And what exactly is that supposed to mean?" My mind whirled with the pent-up emotions of years spent enduring silent suffering. "It means that I am tired of being the punchline in every joke about my life," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have devoted myself to this family, to being the steady rock in our lives, yet every accomplishment I make is overshadowed by your need to belittle me." A murmur of approval and sympathy rippled through our friends, and I could sense the room shifting in solidarity with my words. Melissa's face flushed with anger as she snapped, "You're making a scene, and you know it." I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the rush of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. "Maybe I am making a scene," I admitted, my tone softening as I continued, "because I can no longer stand in silence while my worth is mocked, my efforts dismissed, and my heart crushed by your words." For a moment, the air was thick with tension as the room absorbed the gravity of my outburst. My eyes locked with hers, searching for a sign of remorse or understanding, but all I saw was a flicker of indignation. As the evening wore on, I remained the center of attention, every remark and response fueling the fire of my newfound resolve. The humiliation that had haunted me for so long began to transform into a rallying cry, one that demanded respect and recognition for the sacrifices I had made. I left that night with a bittersweet mixture of relief and sorrow, knowing that while I had finally found my voice, the echoes of that confrontation would linger long after the night had ended. I spent the weekend trying to mend the small cracks in our life, attempting to restore a sense of normalcy after the painful confrontation at the restaurant. With the weight of my words still heavy on my heart, I sought refuge in the simple act of cleaning our house, hoping that organizing our space might also help me organize the tangled mess of emotions swirling inside me. As I methodically dusted the shelves and rearranged items in the attic, I noticed a small, unmarked wooden box tucked away behind a stack of old photo albums. The box, crafted with an intricate design that I hadn't seen before, immediately piqued my curiosity. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding with an unspoken dread, then slowly opened the lid. Inside, wrapped in a soft cloth, lay an expensive gift, a sleek, modern timepiece with a design so refined it could only belong to someone of means. The engraved initials on the back were not mine. In that instant, a cold realization gripped me, and my mind raced back to all the subtle hints I had ignored. The gift was clearly meant for another man, a secret treasure that Melissa had hidden away from my eyes. My pulse quickened as shock, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal mingled into a storm of emotions that I had long tried to suppress. I clutched the box tightly, trying to steady my trembling hands, and, as I stared at the gift, the realization sank in like a lead weight. The humiliation and disdain that had characterized our recent interactions were not merely random cruelties, but part of a larger pattern, a calculated effort to justify her emotional distance and hidden infidelities. The thought made my chest tighten with anger and grief. I retreated to the quiet of the study, where the ticking clock seemed to mirror the relentless beat of my heart. I remembered the countless times Melissa had brushed off my concerns, dismissing them as unfounded suspicions, and now I faced the undeniable evidence of her deceit. My mind raced with questions and accusations, each thought a lash against the fragile remnants of trust one had once held dear. "Why would you do this?" I whispered to the silent room, my voice cracking with raw emotion. The sound of my own question reverberated in the stillness, a painful acknowledgement that my life was built on a foundation of lies. For a long, agonizing moment, I stood there, paralyzed by the magnitude of the betrayal, unable to fully grasp how the person I once believed in could hide such a secret. Slowly, I realized that this discovery was not just about the timepiece or the hidden gift. It was about every moment of humiliation, every dismissive remark, and every instance where I had been made to feel less than worthy. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface for years now surged into a tidal wave of determination. I knew that reacting impulsively would only lead to further pain. So instead, I made a solemn decision. I would gather undeniable proof of her infidelity before confronting her. I carefully replaced the timepiece back into the box, making sure nothing was disturbed, as if preserving the tangible evidence of my shattered illusions. My mind began to formulate a plan, a calculated approach to collect every bit of evidence that would expose the truth behind her facade. I would review every detail of our life, check phone records, and discreetly monitor her activities. The thought of having concrete proof filled me with both dread and a strange sense of empowerment. With the secret box returned to its hidden place, I sat down and began writing in my journal, each word a silent vow that I would not let this betrayal define me, but rather propel me towards reclaiming my dignity. I will uncover every secret, no matter how deeply it is buried, I murmured, determination lacing every syllable. That night, as I lay awake in the darkness of our once shared home, I understood that the path ahead would be arduous and fraught with emotional turmoil. Yet for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of clarity amidst the chaos, a resolute drive to seek the truth, to gather every shred of evidence, and ultimately, to rebuild my life on the unshakable foundation of honesty and self-respect. I spent the following days enveloped in a storm of determination and calculated resolve, the raw pain of betrayal now transforming into a focused drive for truth. Every morning, I woke with a singular purpose, to reclaim the dignity that had been stripped away and to expose the deception that had poisoned our home. The discovery of the hidden gift had shattered the remnants of trust one once held dear, and with it came a steely resolve that left no room for passive suffering. I knew I had to act with precision, so I began by scrutinizing the gift that had so symbolically represented her secret affair. Late one night, when the house was cloaked in darkness, I retrieved the wooden box from its concealed spot and carefully examined the timepiece that lay inside. Its delicate craftsmanship, the smooth glint of metal, and the subtle engraving, all of it confirmed the message I had feared for so long. I resolved then that before any confrontation could take place, I would replace this damning evidence with a flawless replica. I scoured online forums and discreetly contacted a reputable artisan known for his ability to mimic high-end designs. After several tense days, I received the replacement, a counterfeit that, under close inspection, was nearly identical to the original. With painstaking care, I swapped the genuine gift with the replica, ensuring every detail was perfectly aligned so that no one would suspect a thing. "This is only the beginning," I murmured to myself, the quiet conviction in my voice carrying the weight of a man who had finally found his power. My next step was to gather incontrovertible evidence of her continuing deceit. I remembered my old work in IT, the skills I once honed to solve puzzles and track digital footprints. I decided to use those very skills to monitor her movements discreetly. I purchased a compact GPS tracker, a small device that could be easily hidden in her car without detection. One moonless night, I parked across the street from our home and, with a mixture of adrenaline and dread, carefully installed the tracker beneath the dashboard. The cold metal pressed against my skin as I secured the device, and I could almost feel the promise of retribution emanating from it. Soon, every lie will have its time to fall apart, I whispered into the silent darkness. Over the following days, I meticulously monitored her movements, recording every detail. The time she left the house, the unexpected stops, and the locations that confirmed my suspicions. I maintained a detailed log, each entry a silent testament to the unraveling of her carefully constructed facade. Every night, I pored over the data, feeling both the anxiety of potential discovery and the mounting satisfaction of unmasking the truth. At work, I maintained a calm and collected exterior, while inside, every piece of evidence was fueling a plan that grew more intricate with each passing hour. I began cross-referencing her travel patterns with the schedules of her mysterious rendezvous, finding disturbing correlations that left little room for doubt. The more I learned, the more my resolve hardened into a quiet, unwavering conviction that I would not be the victim any longer. I reached out to a trusted friend, a former colleague who still worked in the industry, and in hushed conversations over late-night phone calls, I shared fragments of my plan. "You deserve to see the truth laid bare," he said, his voice low and supportive. "Make sure every detail is documented." His words lent a sense of legitimacy to my actions, and I knew that every piece of information I collected would become the cornerstone of my eventual confrontation. As I set my plans into motion, the days seemed to stretch out in an interminable tension where every second was a mix of calculated risk and quiet determination. My heart pounded with the knowledge that the moment of reckoning was drawing near, a time when every secret, every betrayal, would be exposed for all to see. I continued to refine my strategy, preparing for the day when the evidence would speak louder than any denial or excuse. In the stillness of my modest study, surrounded by the soft hum of a computer and the rustle of papers filled with painstaking details, I felt a profound shift within myself. I was no longer the silent, subservient husband. I had transformed into a man with a mission, ready to reclaim his life and expose the deception that had defined our shared past. And so, with each piece of evidence secured and every detail meticulously planned, I took one final, deep breath, knowing that the future would soon see the collapse of the lies that had once dictated my every moment. I arrived at the restaurant with a heavy mix of anticipation and resolve, the weight of betrayal fueling each step I took. The venue, a dimly lit upscale establishment with soft jazz playing in the background, was bustling with holiday cheer, yet I felt detached from the merriment around me. I had tracked Melissa's every move with the precision of a man who had nothing left to lose, and tonight was the culmination of months of careful planning. I remembered how, just days ago, I had gathered every scrap of evidence, the altered gift, the covert tracker readings, and the painful confessions in my own mind. And now, with my heart pounding in my chest, I was about to expose the truth. I found a secluded table near the entrance, where I could observe without drawing attention, and soon enough, I saw her. There she was, sitting at a table in a private corner of the restaurant with a man whose presence radiated familiarity and intimacy. Melissa's radiant smile, as she exchanged affectionate glances with her companion, struck me like a final blow. I watched as they shared whispered conversations and exchanged a beautifully wrapped gift that the man had presented with an air of pride. The sight was a jarring confirmation of everything I had suspected. My pulse quickened, and a myriad of emotions surged within me. Anger, sorrow, and a steely determination to reclaim my shattered dignity. I steeled myself, knowing that the confrontation I was about to stage would be the turning point in a long battle for truth. Slowly, I rose from my seat and made my way toward their table, every step resonating with the echoes of past hurts and the promise of retribution. As I approached, the room seemed to pause, and their conversation faltered. I slid into the chair across from them, the sudden intrusion sending a ripple of shock through the table. For a moment, silence enveloped us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Melissa's eyes widened, and she stammered, "Jake, what are you?" Before I interjected, my voice calm yet laden with the weight of my discovery. "I've seen everything, Melissa. Every lie, every secret rendezvous, every moment you pretended to be something you're not." The words spilled out steadily, each syllable a release of years of pent-up agony. Her companion shifted uncomfortably, and the soft hum of the restaurant faded into a distant murmur as all eyes in the vicinity began to focus on our table. "You thought I wouldn't notice, didn't you?" I continued, meeting her gaze with an intensity that left no room for denial. "You justified your cruelty by dismissing my efforts, and now I'm here to show you that I know the truth. I know about the gift, the clandestine meetings, and every deceitful act that has reduced our marriage to a sham." Melissa's face contorted with a mixture of anger and desperation, and she tried to speak, her words halting and unsure. "Jake," she began, but I pressed on. "There is no excuse for your betrayal, Melissa. I trusted you, believed in you, and every smile, every word was a lie. Today, your truth is laid bare for everyone to see." The confrontation drew whispers and stares from nearby tables, the restaurant's warm ambience now replaced by an icy chill of scandal. Her companion remained silent, the gravity of the situation pinning him in place. I leaned back slightly, feeling the catharsis of releasing my long-held pain, yet the toll of the moment left me emotionally drained. "I'm done pretending," I said softly, my voice trembling slightly despite my resolve. "I am leaving tonight with nothing but the knowledge that I will no longer live in the shadow of your lies." With that, I rose, leaving a stunned silence in my wake as I turned and walked away from the table. Each step felt both like a victory and a final farewell to the life I once knew, and as I exited the restaurant, the cool night air embraced me, a silent promise of a future free from deception. I returned home that night, with my heart still racing from the explosive confrontation, each step toward our front door feeling like a reluctant surrender to a life I no longer recognized. The silence that greeted me inside was heavy, laden with memories of a shared past that had turned bitter, and as I moved through the dimly lit corridors, every shadow seemed to whisper of the betrayal I had just exposed. I sank into the familiar, worn armchair in our living room, struggling to process the torrent of emotions swirling inside me, a mixture of sorrow, anger, and a tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, I could begin to reclaim my self-respect. Minutes later, the sound of the front door creaking open shattered the quiet. Melissa appeared, her face contorted with fury and desperation, as if she were scrambling to regain control over the narrative of our lives. Without a word, she strode into the room, her eyes darting around as if searching for a way to mend the irreparable damage. "Jake, what do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice a harsh whisper that cut through the silence like shattered glass. I took a steadying breath, the memory of the restaurant confrontation still fresh in my mind. "Melissa, I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to come to terms with the truth," I replied, my tone measured but unyielding. Her gaze flared with indignation as she stepped closer, arms folded tightly over her chest. "You think you have all the answers now? You think exposing me here is going to fix everything?" She spat, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush that betrayed her inner panic. I felt the remnants of old wounds clashing with the newfound resolve that had grown from the ruins of our marriage. "This isn't about fixing anything," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the tumult inside me. "It's about recognizing that I deserve better than living under constant deception." The air between us crackled with tension as she circled, her posture desperate and aggressive. "You're making a mistake, Jake. You're overreacting. I was only trying to help our careers. Networking, Melissa calls it. This isn't about betrayal. It's about opportunity," she insisted, her words laced with manipulation as she tried to turn the narrative back on me. I clenched my fists, recalling every instance when her charm and cunning had belittled my efforts and stripped away my dignity. "Help? Is this what you call help?" I countered, my voice rising slightly. "All I see is a woman who chooses lies over loyalty, someone who uses her position to hide her true self while I'm left picking up the pieces." Her eyes flashed with anger, and she took a step forward, almost as if to grab at the very words that had now become my shield. "You're twisting everything, Jake. You're just bitter because you can't handle the fact that I'm not the person you thought I was. You always believed I was perfect, and now you're throwing it all away with your pride," she snarled, each word designed to undermine the resolve that had been building inside me. I shook my head slowly, feeling a calm certainty that I had never known before. "No, Melissa," I said softly but firmly. "I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the constant humiliation and gaslighting. I refuse to let my life be dictated by your need for control." Her expression shifted momentarily, a flash of vulnerability that was quickly masked by renewed anger. "You're making a huge mistake," she hissed, her tone now a mixture of fear and defiance. "You think leaving will solve everything, but you're only proving that you're weak." In that moment, every ounce of my suffering coalesced into a single, clear truth. I was no longer willing to be a pawn in her game. "I'm not weak, Melissa," I replied, my voice unwavering as I met her gaze squarely. "I'm finally strong enough to stand up for myself. I've spent too many years being diminished by your actions, and I won't let that continue any longer." A heavy silence fell between us, the only sound the distant hum of a refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock that had witnessed our countless arguments. I gathered my belongings, a few personal items and a small box of memories that I couldn't risk leaving behind, and stepped toward the door. As I paused in the threshold, she reached out in a last, futile attempt to anchor me to the past. "Jake, please, don't go," she pleaded, her voice trembling as she tried to bridge the widening chasm between us. I looked back at her, seeing not the woman I had once loved, but a stranger cloaked in deceit and despair. "I'm sorry, Melissa," I said quietly, feeling both sorrow and relief mingle within me. "But I have to leave. I deserve a chance to rebuild my life, free from all the lies." With that final declaration, I closed the door behind me, each step away from our home echoing with the promise of a new beginning, a future where I would no longer be defined by her manipulation, but by my own strength and the hope of a life rediscovered. I spent the days after leaving our home immersed in a whirlwind of paperwork, consultations, and relentless determination to reclaim my life. The decision to file for divorce had not been made lightly, but the mounting evidence of Melissa's betrayals left no room for compromise. I began by gathering every scrap of documentation that chronicled the deception, emails, messages, and the meticulously recorded tracker data that painted a damning picture of her double life. Each piece of evidence was a painful reminder of the years I had spent trying to hold our crumbling marriage together. Sitting in a cramped conference room at a local law firm, I met with my attorney, a steady, no-nonsense man whose calm demeanor belied a fierce commitment to justice. His eyes, scanning the files I prepared, filled me with a sense of both dread and hope as he said, "The evidence you have is overwhelming. We can build a case that leaves no room for doubt." His words, though reassuring, resonated deeply with the bittersweet knowledge that every document represented a piece of my shattered past. Over the next few weeks, I attended countless meetings and court sessions, each one chipping away at the facade that had once obscured the truth. In a particularly tense session, I found myself on the witness stand, recounting moments of betrayal with a measured clarity that surprised even me. I recalled the discovery of the hidden gift, the nights spent poring over data, and the agonizing realization that the woman I once loved had orchestrated a life of lies. Every detail I provided was met with murmurs of empathy from those present, while Melissa's legal team attempted to paint my actions as those of a bitter, unstable man unable to accept reality. "You must have felt utterly betrayed," my lawyer remarked quietly to me during a recess, his tone gentle yet firm. "Your testimony is the strongest part of our case." I nodded, knowing that the courtroom had become the arena where I could finally reclaim my dignity and expose the deception that had defined our marriage. Outside the sterile walls of the courtroom, the whispers of my colleagues and former friends provided an unexpected chorus of support. Even as Melissa's team tried to twist the narrative, portraying her as a victim of my supposed overreaction. Every piece of evidence I presented shattered the illusion of her perfect life. In heated exchanges with opposing counsel, I maintained my composure, letting the weight of undeniable proof speak for itself. I trusted her completely, and she repaid that trust with lies and betrayal. I declared during one of the sessions, my voice resonating with the authority of a man who had nothing left to lose. The judge's steady gaze and the quiet nods from the jury reinforced the fact that the scales of justice were beginning to tip in my favor. Despite the legal complexities and the emotional toll of revisiting old wounds, each session brought me a step closer to a future unburdened by Melissa's manipulations. I began to see a clear path ahead, a future where my identity was not defined by her actions, but by my ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. The legal battle, as grueling as it was, transformed from a fight for retribution into a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. With every document submitted, every testimony given, and every hard-won victory in the courtroom, I felt the heavy chains of my past slowly begin to break. I left each session with a renewed sense of purpose, convinced that justice was not just about punishment, but about reclaiming the integrity that had been stripped away over the years. As I drove home after another long day in court, the cool night air was filled with the promise of a new beginning, a life where the echoes of betrayal would no longer dictate my every move. I stepped into my modest apartment with a deep sense of relief and cautious optimism, each step a symbol of my liberation from a past shrouded in betrayal. The space was small and unadorned, yet every bare wall and sparse piece of furniture represented a blank slate, a promise that I could rebuild my life on my own terms. The first few mornings were quiet. The soft hum of the coffee maker and the gentle rustling of the newspaper offered a comforting rhythm that was entirely my own. I began reconnecting with the work I had once set aside, dedicating myself to the projects that had always sparked my passion in IT, and every successful line of code became a small victory over the years of emotional neglect. My colleagues, noticing the subtle transformation in my demeanor, began to praise my renewed energy, and soon enough, opportunities one had long forgotten began to reappear. One afternoon, as I walked out for a much-needed break, a close friend from work greeted me with a warm smile. "Jake, I've missed this spark in you," he said, his words like a gentle pat on my back, affirming that the painful chapters of my past were finally being replaced by the promise of a brighter future. Evenings became times for reconnection with my children, whose laughter filled the apartment with life and reminded me of the love that still surrounded me. We cooked dinner together, shared stories from our days, and in those precious moments, I felt the heavy weight of betrayal lift, replaced by a burgeoning hope that I could create a home filled with genuine warmth and understanding. The contrast between my new life and the chaos I had left behind was stark. While Melissa's world continued to crumble under the consequences of her deceit, mine was beginning to blossom with fresh opportunities and renewed self-worth. I would often glance at my reflection in the mirror, marveling at the man who now stood there, a man who had found the courage to leave a life of lies and who was determined to forge a future defined by integrity and self-respect. Late one evening, as I sat on my modest balcony, savoring a cup of coffee and the cool embrace of the night, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The city lights twinkled like distant stars, each one a reminder that every ending could lead to a new beginning. "This is my chance to start over," I whispered into the stillness, a gentle affirmation that the pain of yesterday was merely a stepping stone to something better. The process of healing was gradual, each day offering small but significant triumphs. A successful presentation at work, a heartfelt conversation with my children, even the simple act of waking up without the dread that had once plagued me. I began exploring hobbies that I had long set aside, rediscovering the joy of creativity in the form of sketching and writing, activities that filled the empty hours with inspiration rather than sorrow. I reconnected with old friends who had been supportive during the darkest times, and with each reunion, I felt more grounded in the reality that I was building a life based on truth resilience, and hope. Though Melissa's influence lingered in the recesses of my mind like a distant memory, it no longer held me captive. Instead, I focused on the lessons learned, the strength discovered in adversity, and the value of self-respect that emerged from every tear shed. My apartment, humble as it was, gradually transformed into a sanctuary where my spirit could heal and my dreams could take root. Every piece of furniture was chosen with care, each item a symbol of the new life I was creating, one where I was free to love, to laugh, and to live without the shadows of the past. In that space, I found not just refuge, but a renewed identity, a man reborn from the ashes of betrayal, ready to embrace a future that promised growth, authenticity, and a hard-earned peace. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.